We want to bring value. We want to create value. And in fact, that has to be the lead of everything that we do from a company standpoint, whether it's marketing, whether it's customer service, whether it's product design. All of it has to be designed to bring value. That meant even if we had the option between something that was more profitable and something that delivered more value, we chose the thing that delivered more value. Why? Because value is the only thing that's sustainable. Value is the only thing that lasts. And value is the only thing that people will pay for forever. But there's one immutable truth about millennials, and I think it'll ring true with you guys, because I'm sure you feel it yourself. They want to matter. They want to know that they wake up every day and they're contributing to a company that's trying to do something, or they're bringing value somehow in their life, to even if it's one person, even if I just help one person, it'll all be worth it.
Need motivation? Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them for me, because I want to wake up every day and watch a video that puts me in a mindset to believe in myself more and go off and accomplish amazing things and attack the day. And I hope that this video does that for you as well. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Tom Bilyeu, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is focus on growth.
I keep hearing this word, edutainment. Has anyone perfected that, or is that the direction we're moving in?
Man, you can keep your edutainment. I tell my team all the time, anybody holding impact theory keys that's looking for edutainment, you are going to be really unhappy. So the way that I see it is we have a funnel system at the top of impact. So impact theory exists for one reason and one reason only: to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset at scale through story. That's it. That's why I get up every morning. That's why I fight as hard as I do. And so I saw Star Wars. It introduced me to a character called Yoda. I thought Yoda was dope as hell. And then at 16, a friend of mine said, hey, you should read this book called The Tao Te Ching. And I read it, and I was like, yo, these are like Yoda quotes. And so Yoda gave me an in to an ancient Chinese philosophy that ended up changing my life. And so Taoism then plants the seeds for what we would now call a growth mindset. And that started with Star Wars. And so that's how we want to do it. Star Wars doesn't preach at you, but if you take Yoda's advice, it will actually make your life better. And so my thing is, can we tell stories like The Matrix, like Karate Kid, like Shawshank Redemption, where there's a core idea at the center of it that's literally life-changing, but it's just entertainment.
Rule number 3 is never set an alarm.
If you can avoid setting an alarm, you're going to be way better off. One, you know in the back of your mind, oh God, I've got that alarm coming. Is it time? And then also, you want to get as much sleep as your body will allow you to get. So if your body needs 8 hours, get 8 hours. If your body needs 9 hours, get 9 hours. So I find that I naturally sleep about 6.5 to 7 hours a night. That's just my rhythm. No matter how sort of relaxed and stressed I am, that's just where I wake up. It's perfect. I feel well rested. My cognition is absolutely optimized. So find your number, but make sure that you don't have an alarm staring you in the face, that you get whatever amount of sleep you need. And that's me saying that as somebody that's run big companies, is very busy. I work 93 hours a week, and yet I still manage to get sleep. Now, I fully understand if you have kids, there are extenuating circumstances, but you want to do everything else right. You want to get to the point where at least the only thing that's going to disrupt your sleep is the kids, so that you do all the things that you can around sleep hygiene to make sure that you're ready.
Rule number 4 is be a great leader.
Entrepreneurs want to do everything themselves. So as an entrepreneur, you're the gritty person that just gets it done, right? You hit an obstacle, you go over it, under it, through it, around it, whatever you have to do, but you don't stop at that obstacle. Like that to me is the very definition of an entrepreneur. Yeah. So then as you scale your company, you realize you can't do everything yourself. Like you really want to, and you absolutely cannot, because you will halt the growth of your own company by trying to do it all yourself. So now you have to work as a proxy. You have to work with other people, through other people, inspire, motivate, paint a vision, keep everybody moving in the same direction. And in doing that, in stepping back and functioning through other people, you really have to develop an entirely different skill set, which is not the, because in the early days, an entrepreneur, they're a leader for sure, there's no question, but it's cult of personality. So I was on the line making bars every day. That's what I did. I wore a hairnet, a lab coat, the latex gloves, and I made protein bars. Yeah. Now, so how did you know that you should respect me? Because I would take the hardest job on the line, right? That was my thing.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is get sun exposure.
Your night sleep begins the morning before. And one of the most important things that you can do is get direct sun exposure into your eyes and on your skin first thing in the morning. Now, I know a lot of people live in northern latitudes and you're stepping outside and it's basically just a gray day, but even that helps. It's better than nothing. You want to get out. You want that sunlight to hit your eyes. You want that sunlight to hit your skin because it helps to set your circadian rhythms. It's one of the most important things you can do for actually getting a good night's sleep, but it starts the morning before. And by the way, as a pro tip, when you're traveling, this is one of the critical things that you want to do to adjust to the new time zone. The second you wake up, get out, go outside and get that sun exposure. And I try to look up into the sky, not at the sun, as that will burn your eyes out, but I try to look up into the sky to make sure that I'm getting the maximum amount of sunlight into my eyes. I'm not wearing sunglasses. I'm not wearing blue blockers like I'm wearing now, which is part of the night routine. But in the morning when I'm trying to get all that sunlight in to set my circadian rhythms, then I'm making sure that I get that exposure.
Rule number 6 is study Web3.
Everyone has their own definition of Web3. And I've heard it so many times just today. What's your definition?
Yeah, so mine is really simple. I don't think it's going to be groundbreaking for anybody. It's the implications of this simple idea that I think will really surprise people with how much it changes things. So Web 1, read only, you go to a website, there it is. Web 2, social, you can both read and post. Web 3 is about ownership and participation. And what I think people aren't really thinking so much about, I know some people are for sure, but especially in an entertainment context, is the things that you buy are signals of affinity. So what it is that you like. And so that was where the title of today's talk came from, is that, you know, they're called wallets, but that's really a pretty big misnomer. And if we're going to stick with it, it's wallets with more than money. And what I can tell about somebody from an entertainment perspective when you roll up into what I will lovingly refer to as the metaverse archipelago, which we can get more into that later.
Yeah, I want to know that.
But when you roll up into somebody's, you know, little corner of the metaverse, that they can create custom experiences for you based on what's in your wallet. And so as I think about what that's going to be, it's really going to be revolutionary, and I think it's going to introduce an entirely new form of entertainment.
Rule number 7 is be authentic.
What was working well to help grow the company?
Authenticity is the most powerful thing that we've done. We decided we wanted to make a company that was a real reflection of who we are as people. And so we said, we're going to do this all socially, which allowed us to bootstrap the company. We didn't have to spend a lot of money because we could advertise or market essentially for free. And it was go out, be us, be the kind of company we would want to see, be real, connect with these people, find out what their hopes and dreams are, try to serve them, and just deliver value. And that was our thing. So when you have that attitude on social media, people really gravitate towards it because they feel well taken care of. They could see that I actually care, like on a personal level, like seeing that person transform and succeed, like that was just awesome for me. And that was why I got into it for my own family, and I shared the story of my family. And I'll give a perfect example. So in the early days when there were so few of us, I was not only the president, but I was also making the bars myself, and I was the head of customer support. So if you wrote in and had a complaint, you were actually talking directly to me. So one time somebody got a hair in their bar, and I was like, oh, that is so gross. Oh man, I'm freaked out. And the way they wrote the letter was like, I could tell they're expecting me to like position this legally, right? And like, hey, such is the nature of manufacturing and nothing can ever be perfect. And to just list, we wear hairnets. But I was like, forget that. That's nasty. So I wrote back, like, that's gross. You must be really grossed out. I'm mortified that happened. Like, we're such freaks. about making sure that our product is clean and that it's got integrity. But we have failed. Like, clearly, there is a hair in your bar. We have failed. That's so nasty. And you can actually still find that letter online because they ended up posting it.
Really? Wow.
Because they were like, I can't believe they responded like this. Like, so that was our whole shtick. Like, just really be real, be authentic. If you think something is gross, just own it. If you mess up, own it.
Rule number 8 is practice gratitude.
When I first lay down, I think of, and shout out to Doc Gaiman, who was the one that encouraged me to try this. I think of 3 things that I'm truly grateful for. I make them different every day, and I really envision them so that whatever stress I may have coming into going to bed, I'm now putting myself in this grateful place. I'm in a way better mental state. It just feels awesome. And as I'm thinking about those things, I drift off to sleep. And so just recognizing that you can shift your state and get into that much more pleasant place is really powerful. And to even do that on your worst days is incredibly beneficial. And Doc Gaiman talks a lot about that. Even on the day that his father passed away, he did the same thing. And he said 3 things that he was grateful for. And he said even on that day, it helped him fall asleep on a day where he did not think he was going to get sleep. Little things like that make a big difference.
Rule number 9 is use AI.
We've already integrated AI into our marketing funnels, our copywriting pipeline. We've used it for concept art, final image generation, creative ideation, even the human voice generation that I was talking about. And our goal is to create an entirely new form of entertainment that we call borderless entertainment. I won't go deeply into that right now, but the long and the short of it is that we believe with recent advancements in AI and a few other things like AR, we're going to be able to develop really immersive story worlds that are actually able to transcend your computer or PlayStation and allow you to interact with the game in real life. Doesn't mean that we're bringing the game to life, but it means that we're actually able to allow players to interact with the characters through your phone, text message, things like that. We believe that game designers are going to be able to generate fully realized characters that look real, speak realistically, can call you on the phone, reply to your text messages, remember you over time, and give you a completely customized experience that makes it feel like you're really interacting with that world. We're also able to trigger game events based on what you're doing in the real world, whether it's you going to a specific location, walking a certain number of steps, or sending a text message to one of the characters. Gaming is going to become hyper-tailored, hyper-responsive, and hyper-immersive with new storylines, spaces, characters, environments, and dialogue all being generated on the fly thanks to AI. And that's just entertainment. Wait till you see what companies like Viome and the DNA company are doing with AI. The amount of data that AI can crunch through is unbelievable. And when you begin to apply that to medicine, biology, it gets crazy really fast. Google's AlphaFold is a great example. They're using AI to predict a protein's 3D structure just from reading its amino acid sequence in the DNA. All of life is really just data. What will we learn when we begin using high-powered AI to assess the building blocks of life itself? Will we discover the cure to cancer? Perhaps learn to reverse aging? There are very serious people who believe all that and more is not only possible, it's inevitable. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of this hasn't happened yet. It may be years in the future, including some of the things that we're talking about in gaming. But all of this stuff is going to happen. And I think it's going to happen faster than any of us think.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is tap into your passion.
Money is the great facilitator. Money allows things to happen. And if you look at what Bill Gates is doing with the Gates Foundation, I think they're going to cure malaria. They're going to do it because they have access to resources. But at the end of the day, there's this other thing that humans have, which is passion, which is a desire for impact, which is to find meaning in their life. And that was the one thing that was really missing from us. So in many ways, Quest Nutrition is a reaction to our previous company, which was very much, we actually used to joke, this makes me a little uneasy now, but we used to joke that it was a child born to be sold into slavery. And the reason we said that was, it was like any other company. We were just going to build it up to a certain level of revenue, and then we were going to sell it off and move on to the next thing. And we thought it would take us a couple of years, and then that turned into 8.5 years. And somewhere along that time, we really realized that focusing on money wasn't giving us that sense of fulfillment. We weren't tapping into our love or our passion. So we asked ourselves a very simple and fundamental question. What would we do every day and love it, even if we were failing? And that question changed everything for us.
The thing that we agree on is that there are physics to everything.
Totally.
So success has physics. And if you're not trying to do something that violates physics, then you're going to be fine. And so how you get there is somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, speaking to the people that are caught up in the, they're wasting their time. They're not doing the things that they need to do.
Yeah.
They're going to need to create some structure. Now that structure may be as simple as what you're talking about, which is, because if from my frame of reference, the way that I would put thoughts in my own head about what you're saying is, I have a rule, and this is a literal rule of mine. I only do and believe that which moves me towards my goals,
Sure.
which sounds very akin to what you're talking about. It's like, if I do this thing, I get this output. When I wake up early, I've had better things happen. When I'm in shape, better things happen.
Yeah.
When I put in the work, better things happen. And ultimately, that's the thing that I'm trying to get people to anchor around is everything that you do is a test. Mm-hmm. Your test will have results. It's what I call the physics of progress. So to make progress, one must have a hypothesis, know where you are, know where you want to go, understand the obstacle between you and that, come up with a hypothesis about how to overcome that obstacle, run that test, look at the data, very frankly, don't BS yourself,
Sure.
and then come up with a more informed hypothesis and try again over and over and over and over. But ultimately, you're steering by results. And I think very often people either don't know how to, in fact, I think there's a few things that will happen. One, they don't know how to conceive of the problem, so they don't understand the obstacle. Two, they don't know where they're going. Or three, they cannot break themselves out of the dopamine cycle. They haven't identified the pain they're moving away from, whatever insecurity they have. And so they end up in that death loop of feeling like they don't have enough time, when in reality they have the same time as hyper efficient, successful people. They just don't use it in the same fashion.
Is there's two kinds of happiness. There's momentary happiness and there's framework happiness. Framework happiness is what matters. Framework happiness is about becoming something. It's something that nobody can give you and nobody can take away from you. Framework happiness is the thing that you want to build your life around. And I am assuming that you are here today because you believe to the core of your being that you can do something more, that you can execute, that you can build a business, that you can make your dreams come true. So I have a very simple setup that's going to allow you to do that. One, work out. You're doing it, forget the body. Who cares about that? It's easy to see and it's kind of fun and it gets an ooh and ah. But at the end of the day, to train your body and to not understand that what you're really doing is training your mind is to miss the opportunity to optimize the organ that's actually going to make your dreams possible. Second, meditate. You have to learn to take control. Taking control of the autonomic systems in your body are critical so that you decide when you go into fight or flight, you decide when you go into rest and digest, and that you can begin to do the things when they make sense, based on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. Thinkitating is basically taking the alpha wave creative state that you get into while you're meditating and allows you to apply it to the biggest problems that you face to get some clarity. Read, to me, ideas in equal ideas out. If you're not obsessively reading, then you are really missing an opportunity to get new ideas into your ecosystem. Don't pride yourself on having new ideas. Pride yourself on making new connections. And then always keep a list of the most important things that you should be doing to move you towards your goals. Go through that list every day, and you should be doing all of this before you talk to anybody else, before you check an email. And then you're going to execute. Execution is the only thing that matters, but how do you execute? It starts with having clear goals. You need to know exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish. If you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, you're never going to get there. That is simply the truth.
In business, you have your best guess. It's terrible. It's the equivalent of thinking everything revolves around you. And so you create an experiment so that every experiment is meant to show you or to hypothesize about what you need to do to overcome the obstacle that stands between where you are and where you want to go. So you've got a goal. You're in a place and there's something between you and achieving that goal. So you come up with your best guess as to what you would need to do to overcome that obstacle and get closer to your goal. You then do that thing. So this is a physics of progress.
Yeah.
Hypothesis, you run that test. That test is going to fail to some degree. And you realize, oh, wow, okay, so I had my belief about what things were and how to solve this problem were wrong. But in taking that action and being willing to fail, I call failure the most information-rich data stream on planet Earth. So no one should be afraid to fail, but you should be terrified to lie to yourself about the results.
Yeah.
So you failed to some degree. You assess that data. Did you make any progress? Did you move a little closer to your goal and just not as efficiently as you would like? Did you stay in exactly the same place or did you move backwards? So you assess that and now you're a little bit more informed. You're now closer to Newtonian physics. And so now you go, okay, well, I've learned something, but I still can't do GPS, right? So what's going to be that next thing? To figure out that next thing, you're going to run now a Newtonian experiment. You're going to find out where that breaks down. How much farther did that get you closer to your goal? And as that then lets you down, you're like, okay, I got closer, but I didn't get as close as I wanted, or I didn't go as efficiently as I need to go. So now take your learnings and you do that next thing. And you just keep repeating that loop and you'll make ever, closer progress towards your goals.
And then in 1999, a movie called The Matrix came out and it changed my life. This movie, I'm not kidding, this movie gave me the framework with which to think about how life really is. And in the movie, Morpheus says, you have two options. You can take the red pill or the blue pill. Take the red pill. Now, the red pill's only promise is that you're going to wake up in the real world. You're going to understand the way the world really works. Because there's one thing I can tell you, and this is true of everyone in this room right now. The Matrix has you. Because the Matrix is your mind. The Matrix is the web of lies that we all unintentionally pull over our own eyes, that limit our beliefs, that limit the things that we think we can be. In that moment where I had failed in my thesis film, I thought that meant I was a failure. I didn't understand that there's a difference between failing, which is temporary, and being a failure, which is permanent. And the movie The Matrix made me question everything that I believe. Now here's something from neuroscience. Think about this for a second. Your brain is encased in total darkness and silence. It never sees light. And yet, you recreate this world faithfully enough to be able to move around it without bumping into too much stuff. But the reality is there's actually a dime-size area where you have no sight, dead center in each eye, where the optic nerve connects to the eye, but you don't see it. Why? Because the brain is filling it in. The brain is making its best guess as to what's there. And once I realized that's how the Matrix works, for good intention or ill, it doesn't matter, but something is constructing the world around you. And once you understand that that world is a construction, it is made up of your mind. Right now, in this moment, you are choosing to believe a whole host of things. But those beliefs are a choice. And understanding that those beliefs are a choice will set you free. The biggest piece of advice that I have for you guys today, and if you remember nothing else that I say, remember this. Do and believe that which moves you towards your goals. Period. Of everything you choose to believe about yourself. And right now, the things you believe about yourself are so crazy that your worst enemies probably don't think about you the things that you think about yourself.
The world is changing, and I cannot say that emphatically enough. I'm sure there are gaggle of millennials here. Millennials are just the first wave of a shift that is coming. The world is moving to a commerce style that is driven entirely by impact. What are you trying to do? Where the consumer is going to make a demand that you tell them what you stand for, that you tell them how you're spending your profits. They want to know. And they're not going to support your brand unless you do that. And we're going to get into that more and how it should affect your business, and how for those of you that are in this for the right reasons, that really want to build something that matters, and you're willing to break yourself the half to pull it off, this is the best news ever. But make sure you know your why, what's driving you.
When I first got in front of the camera, I thought all I was ever going to talk about was business. And what I found was in trying to help people have more success with their business, I had to constantly keep coming back to how to think. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, the real magic is being able to solve novel problems. And to be able to solve novel problems, you have to think in a certain way. And the fast way to round that is from first principles. But most people don't even understand the first principles of how the world works, how their own mind works. And so they constantly fall prey to really dumb things just because they're not they don't know how to assess their own decision-making process. And so one of the most important lessons that I learned, and it really is a demarcation point in my life, it's a line in the sand. It's one of the only things that's really a line in the sand in my life, where it's like my life before and my life after. But it was the realization that I had motivations that I was unaware of. So I was being driven by a desire for other people to think me smart. And I thought I was driven by a desire to be successful. And that wasn't true. And so there was a moment I had been hired by these entrepreneurs that said, hey, let's build this company together. But originally they just hired me as an employee. And I'd been hired by them. And I was arguing for an idea that I knew was dumb and was worse for the company than the idea that they were putting forth. But I needed to have them think I was smart. So I kept arguing until I convinced them of my way of doing it, even though I knew it was wrong. And so I was like, whoa, I'm having this existential crisis of like, wait, do you actually want to be successful, or do you want to feel smart? Was how I thought of it at the time. And I was like, okay, look, no judgment on yourself, dear self, but which of these two things do you actually want? Because if you want to feel smart, you need to immediately quit working at this company because they're smarter than you, they're farther ahead than you, and it's just going to be this eternal torture chamber. And conversely, if you really want to be successful, then you need to let go of your self-esteem and just stay here and grow this business. And I realized very quickly, well, that's neither of those are going to work, because I really do want to be successful like that. And I realized at that point that you need to know what your values are and you need to put them in order. And so to be successful wasn't my highest value. That would be my marriage, but it was right below my marriage. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is really going to be that driving thing, I don't think it is wise to give up your self-esteem. I think that people that have no self-esteem and never believe that they will feel good about themselves again, they commit suicide. So I was like, that is not a wise approach. So what am I left with? And so I thankfully realized that I could build my self-esteem around something that moved me towards my goal of being successful. And that was, instead of trying to feel smart or have other people think I'm smart, I can value myself for identifying the right answer rather than being right. And so that was utterly transformative. And so I began, obviously, I understood identity as a concept. And so that's really important to understand that you have an identity, whether you think you do or not. You are living into that identity, whether that identity is empowering you or disempowering you. Most people have a disempowering identity. And so I decided to take conscious control of my identity and to think of myself as the learner. So I'm an average person, but I can get better at anything. And that became what I think of as the only belief that matters. So the only belief that matters is that if you put time and energy into getting better at something, you actually will get better at that thing. Now, the reason that's the only belief that matters is when people feel stuck, lost, hopeless, it's because they think where they're at is a permanent state of affairs. And if you realize that, no, where you're at is a reflection of the choices you have made thus far and your current skill set. But you can make different choices and get a different skill set. And to do that, though, you have to pour time and energy into getting better at that thing.
Somebody just today in this room came up to me and said, I feel like I'm doing too much, Tom. I want to enjoy my 20s. What's your advice to me? My advice is sell your 20s. I literally lost my 20s. They were completely gone. I didn't do anything with them other than work. All I did, because understand, growing up, I did not view myself as very smart. And in fact, from a pure IQ standpoint, I'm not that smart. And I'll say that IQ is really the ability to process data rapidly. And I know that we all want to push it off and say, well, EQ is equally important and all that. And it is, it's great. But having the raw horsepower, if you have it, leverage it. And if you don't, address it. And so I had to accept that I wasn't one of those people that learns things really fast. So I had to go head down and do a lot of work. And that was how I moved through the company. So very rapidly, I took myself from being hired as a copywriter to becoming an owner in the company through pure sweat equity. I never put a dime into the company, but my performance was so dominant and my desire to succeed so freakish that the level of value that I was delivering to the company was extreme enough that they were willing to give me a piece of the company so that they wouldn't lose me. Okay, we'll call that being a linchpin employee. I don't think everybody needs to want to run their own company. Running your own company takes a certain thing inside. Derek talked about it in his talk. I think you've got to be driven by something. It's got to be something that's propelling you forward, some sickness. And if you know Batman, and if you know me, you know my obsession with Batman. Batman is driven by a sickness. There's this dark thing inside him that propels him forward. If you have that, if there's something that you need to build and bring to the world that you just can't shake, you can't get rid of, whether you're a born entrepreneur or not, because to me they are very separate, whether you're a born entrepreneur or not is irrelevant. And I put that to the test, and I worked my way up through the company. I got ownership of the company. I became the chief marketing officer. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life.
Once I realized that I could just get better at sitting in this emotion. I don't have to run from this emotion. Then you begin to get stronger. You become more capable of facing things. Then if you have a value system that says, hey, Tom, don't be weak. That feeling of you want to run and hide, stop, man up, face it, sit in it, do not allow yourself. And then when I do it, I'm like, bro, this is why you are you. This is why you've accomplished what you've accomplished. Because in this moment, everybody else runs. In this moment, everybody else breaks. In this moment, everybody else becomes so insecure that they go chase distraction, but you don't. You sit here, even when I go to the dentist and it hurts, I open my mouth wider and I'm like, get in there. I don't flinch. I don't try to pull back. I'm like, yeah, baby. Get that drill in there. Go on, scrape it, get down to the bone, even though it hurts and my every impulse is to pull away. If I'm dealing with something and it makes me anxious, I won't blade. Blading is where you turn sideways to something. When somebody does that to you, they're either intimidated by you, they're stressed, whatever. I will face that thing head on, literally and figuratively. If something is terrifying me, I'm like, I'm in this. I'm not running from this. I'm dealing with this. When I've got a hard thing that I don't want to do, which is almost always contracts, I'm like, here we go. We're going to do these contracts. I'm going to do this contract at 3 a.m. When everybody else, they wake up, and actually they're sleeping. Who are we kidding? They're still asleep. I'm up. I'm looking at a contract, and I am emotionally rewarding myself to the ends of the earth for doing that.
Having a network like you do, what has that done as far as opening up doors? How has that helped you learn? Why is it important to have a big network, and how has that helped you in your life?
Well, so what's interesting is I've really come to the power of having a network very late in my life. It is not a skill that I have naturally at all. My wife is much better. But ultimately, you end up doing business with people that you like and that you trust. And so as you're building relationships over time, they just end up becoming these incredible deals that expand your reach and expand especially now, the universe I'm in media, they expand the kind of attention that you can get for your project, the different directions that you can take something. So as we build out the game portion of what we're doing now and being able to collaborate with other game developers because we know each other and trust each other, that kind of thing goes a long way. And so it goes from this thing doesn't exist to now this whole thing that we're doing. We have an upcoming partnership that unfortunately I can't announce yet, but dude, it's with, the person is just unbelievably famous. And to have gotten into that world and gotten to know their team, because they've unfortunately passed away, but to get to know their team and all that, it's really pretty extraordinary, and was born not just of business mathematics, but born of human connection. And so that kind of stuff magnifies out 1,000-fold. I start developing a growth mindset, and I meet these two guys who were very successful entrepreneurs, and I had promised myself 2 things as a kid. One day I'll be rich, and one day I'll have 6-pack abs. Now, I had no idea how I was going to have either of those. My family was morbidly obese. And I just thought,
and I'm going to make it happen somehow. So I meet these two guys. They're successful entrepreneurs, so they were very wealthy, and they were bodybuilders, so they were yoked. I thought, this is perfect. And so they said, look, man, we need a copywriter. Why don't you come with us? They gave me the famous line, you're coming to the world with your hand out, and if you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. So come with us and get rich. And they said, you can have any job in this startup company. It was a tech company that we're starting. You can have any job you want. You just have to become the right person for the job, which means you're going to have to develop skills. And so I took them at their word. Everyone thought I was crazy, like you're leaving the security of teaching for like these crazy guys. Like, are you sure it's even real? And I just thought, I don't have anything to lose. Like, I don't even understand the pushback. Like, in the off chance that this is all real and that they're really going to create this entrepreneurial opportunity for me, I'm at least going to learn something, even if it's to what to look out for the next time. So I went with them. It ended up being this extraordinary, just really brutal boot camp of business, if I'm completely honest, because they didn't give a shit. Like, you're either going to do the work or you're not. We're not going to mollycoddle you. We're not going to waste time. Like, here's what needs to be done. Go figure it out. And that ended up being exactly what I needed. So over the next 15 years, I figured out business.
Our mission statement is to pull people out of the matrix at scale through story. And so we want to invisibly introduce a growth mindset to them through characters that they, will hopefully grow up with and love. Our sweet spot is 11 to 15-year-olds, which is very anathema to where Web3 is at now, but I don't think it is, it's going to stay that way for long. And so that's a big focus for us. But yeah, right now in the Western world, your zip code is the #1 predictor of your future success. And I think, given that that's even more predictive than your IQ, this isn't an intelligence thing. This is an ideas problem. And so with my passions, talent, and skills, that was the only way that I could see to meaningfully contribute to that problem. And I really think that just like stories have impacted me by introducing me to ideas. And the example I always give is Star Wars introduced me to Yoda, Yoda introduced me to the Tao Te Ching, and then Taoism changed my life. And so we want to have that kind of flow where you can introduce people to some pretty incredible ideas, but you have to do it through pure entertainment. We are not an edutainment company. This is about entertaining people. And it just so happens that if you take Yoda's advice, your life will be better.
When people ask me, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? First of all, I'd grab that by the lapel because I have very little time to make a deep impact. And I would say, you have one mission. You're going to go give the following speech to as many people that you respect as humanly possible. Find the person that's living your ideal life and tell them, I will work for you for free for the next 90 days. I will work harder and smarter than anyone ever. Nothing will be beneath me. I will pick up dog shit. I will take out your trash, whatever you want. And I will make you believe in a higher power just by how hard I'm working. You won't be able to understand how one human could be this driven. Then deliver on that, actually work that hard, actually be that down for anything, ride or die, and then tell them, all I want in exchange for this is knowledge and connections. I don't want money, don't pay me anything. At the end of the 90 days, because I have to eat, at the end of the 90 days, if I've made myself so valuable to you that you would rather pay me than lose me, then bring me on payroll. If not, we shake hands and we part ways. If you are diehard, that will work, man. That will work. But right now, we're in an era in culture where I'm worried for people because they're so like tit for tat that they don't want an internship. They want to get paid. Listen, fine.
And equity. And equity.
Right. It's like, it doesn't matter to me. I'm already rich. Like, this isn't a thing that like hurts me somehow or woe is me. This is like a guy whose life is predicated on being able to help other people live their best life. I'm telling you, my biggest piece of advice, go learn. Go learn.
What were some of the entrepreneurial advice today that you wish you could have given yourself back then, knowing what you know now?
Okay, so one, when you're building something that you don't know your way around, rather than trying to figure out everything yourself, there are a lot of people out there that already know this, and you can actually save a lot of money by paying some money up front to get somebody who can come in and tell you what all the pitfalls are. Yeah. So when I was starting Impact Theory, what I did was taking that lesson from Quest, I started hiring people to tell me why I was going to fail. And so we were getting into comics as a great example. And I was like, okay, most people go to somebody that's been there, done that, they're ahead of them, and they say, okay, what do I need to do to be successful? And I started asking people a different question, which is, why am I going to fail? Now, the reason I wanted to ask that was, one, I wanted to give them permission to be negative so that they would tell me, like, here are all the real things that are coming for you, because it's going to be that unknown that I didn't know anything about, I wasn't prepared for, and don't know how to handle. So getting people to go, oh, okay, here are the landmines you're probably not expecting, that was enlightening and literally shaved years off of our learning curve. So that would be a big one.
What was your system for decision making? Because I can imagine you have to make tons of decisions with not all the info, and then behind that there's more and more and more decisions. What have you found looking back was effective and worked for entrepreneurs that might be listening and have to make some of their own decisions to grow or scale? What were some things you learned from that experience?
Always better to make a decision and be wrong than be afraid to make a decision. So not making a decision is like a guaranteed wrong answer. So going in, making a decision, then learning rapidly from what you've done, like that's the key. To not let your ego get tied up into whether or not you made the right decision. Okay, it didn't work out, fantastic. What are you learning and how are you going to apply it moving forward? And so that's one thing that I'll say, I'm not afraid to make decisions. So I'm also not afraid to be embarrassed. I'm not afraid to be wrong. I'm certainly not afraid to admit that I was wrong. So really buying into the notion of extreme ownership to learn from your mistakes. So that was, that's, any entrepreneur has to be able to do that. And the ones that get tricked into thinking that there's a way to make all the right decisions all the time, and so they want to go slow and they want to really think about things.
Right, yeah.
It's like they're just going to end up being paralyzed. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't try to make a thoughtful approach whenever you can, but it does mean that you have to be able to make decisions under live fire. And you've got to be able to make them quickly, and you've got to be able to learn even faster. This is what I talk about with business and mindset. I always tell people you have to understand how the game works. And what I mean by that is there's a physics to everything. So there's a physics of business, so thinking from first principles, how these things are actually structured. And I think the big breakthrough, and I've heard you say this, and I think this is really smart, there's a difference between the basics and the fundamentals.
Yes.
The basics is just 101.
Yep.
So here are the sort of words and phrases that you're going to need. The fundamentals are the physics. This is how it works. And once you know how something works, then you can get good at it. But if you, and I really think the vast majority of humanity, and I don't care what class you're in, the vast majority of humanity does not understand how the world works. Therefore, they are at the mercy of the world, and the people that figure out how it works can change things. You know, I mean, we'd use a negative word, say manipulate, but it really isn't that. Like, this is power. Close your eyes, imagine a world better than this one. Open your eyes, get the skills to make that world come true, and go actually make it come true. That's power. Imagine being able to close your eyes, imagine something, open your eyes, and actually be able to create it. That's power. So whether that's to change, you know, people growing up in the inner cities, whether that's to create generational wealth in your own family, whether that's to learn architecture and build a bridge or a house, whatever. Like, that is the point. But to be able to do that, you have to understand how things work.
All the information that you need is out there right now. Go read a book, go listen to a podcast, find somebody that's been successful in the way that you want and listen to them. The bad news is you won't take all of their advice. You'll take some of it, some small percentage, but the reality is you're gonna have to go out and try and suffer and fail all on your own to learn. Now, the great news is it works, and it works really well. And if you fail and suffer and fall on your face and get back up enough times and really reflect on it, then you're gonna get better. And Ray Dalio has an amazing math equation, which I'm gonna use so much. I think it's really, really powerful. And that is pain plus reflection equals progress. And I think that that's incredibly, incredibly true. And the human animal just needs that bit of pain. It is the compass that's going to allow you, if you reflect on why you're feeling that pain, what you did wrong, how you failed, you don't deflect, you don't make it somebody else's problem. You really just look at, how did I f this up? If you look at that and are willing to make the changes, you really will make progress. I don't see a way to really have grand scale change without the suffering. That's the truth.
Meditation is one of the most important things that I've added to my daily routine. I'm not joking when I say that, I always say it saved my life. That's probably a bit of hyperbole, but whoa, did it keep me from getting myself into real emotional trouble in the hardest periods of my life and the most stressful, where there was the most on the line. It was so comforting to know that I was never more than 45 minutes away from total equanimity. And the only way for me to achieve that is through meditation. So meditation is a critical part of my daily practice. It is really simple. So I do what's called just breathe meditation. So I'm gonna take my shoes off here. Any couch will do, anything that's comfortable, any chair, wherever you're gonna be comfy. And I sit just in a nice, simple, cross-legged style in a position that I think I can maintain. Usually I can maintain sitting like this for about 20 to 30 minutes before my feet start going numb. And I found, for whatever reason, that when I touch my hands together, that it creates this sense of like the energy looping. I don't know, that feels so silly to say, but it was one where I started out doing this, and then I just found myself wanting to do this, to rest my hands, not interlace or anything, just really simply in my lap. I sit comfortably. I don't try to, have like really strict posture. I actually find the more I sit up, the harder it is to breathe from my diaphragm. So I have a slight curve to my spine. I sit super comfortably, and then I just breathe. I will just say, here's some good advice for anybody, literally no matter what phase of your life you're in. Off the top, pay bills. Then you need to be saving. You want to save as rapidly as you can to get to the point where you have 6 months cash on hand, period. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your value system is. This is just reality. And we're recording this in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis. So can anybody say that that would be a bad idea to have 6 months living expenses? Not cut your life to the quick. The way you live now, you can live without changing a thing for 6 months. If you're unable to save, your lifestyle is out of control, and you need to get your lifestyle to a point where you can save up to that. Because you only have two levers, the amount of money you make and the amount of money you spend. That's it, homie. So it's one or the other. Now, that is not something that I was good at when we met. That's certainly something that I've gotten more disciplined over time. But even in the beginning of our relationship, when you were like, hey, it's really, I come from a saving standpoint, I was like, that actually does make sense. Like, I've always been by myself. I've always kept my expenses very low, but there's no question that is a very smart way to approach it. I have an idea, which I think is actually the same idea that I encapsulate as action cures all. And what I'm trying to get people to understand, all that anxiety, all that worry, it will go away if you start taking action. Now, hiding in that is, you have to face it so that you can take action. But the idea is to get busy solving the problem. And I don't know how much you know about Andrew Huberman and you can reprogram somebody's thinking by getting them to move their eyes laterally. And the reason he hypothesizes, and this makes a ton of sense to me,
doing it now,
is that,
feel better.
Is that when you move forward, your eyes are constantly scanning to the sides to keep you moving on your path. So it is the thing that we do when we are moving forward. And so you're giving the brain the subtle signal that I'm moving towards this, I'm dealing with this. And so there's a sense of like lowering of the anxiety, which 100% I experience every time I'm like really concerned about something. I'm like, if I just start building out a plan and going and attacking this, I'm going to change my neurochemistry, guaranteed 100%. And it's the one thing, to your point, that people don't end up doing. Like, they never turn and face it because there's the most friction right before you break through and are like, oh, no, I'm dealing with it and everything's going down. Because you don't want to look at it. You don't want to deal with it. Impact theory is all about when I was 18, I started big brothering for this kid, extraordinary kid, loved him, and was just like, whoa, his zip code is really with his entire life. And I thought, it planted a seed. At the time, I was too young and stupid to really think anything quite too intelligent. I just wanted him to know somebody loved him because he came from a very troubled home. And then flash forward 15 years later, and I've got 1,000 employees that remind me of this kid. And they're growing up in crazy circumstances. Like one guy held his stepfather while he bled to death from a gunshot wound to the head. Another kid saw his sister shot to death in the heart with an AK-47 in his front yard. Another kid hid under a car while his best friend tried to hold his intestines in and bled to death like 8 inches from his face. I mean, it's just like story after story like that. So crazy. And I was like, why don't they get out of this situation? Like, this is crazy. And some of them were objectively more intelligent than I am, meaning they can process raw data more quickly than I can, but they weren't going to do anything with their lives because
they didn't have, like, if you think of intelligence as the hardware, they didn't have the operating system, the software, to make sense of the world, to operate in a way that would allow them to leverage their intelligence. And so I just got really hardcore about, there's got to be a way to teach this, because I didn't start with business instincts, and yet I've built very successful companies. So how do I pass this on? And I found that about 2% of them actually took the information, because I said, look, I will teach you everything I know about business. I will make myself available. I will come in early. I will stay late. We created something called Quest University. Like, I will be way diehard to give you this information. And 2% of them, it changed their lives and their families' lives forever. 98%, on the other hand, did f*** all with the information. And I was just like, this is crazy. So I was very frustrated with this 98% drop off. And I was very willing to accept I was the problem, that I just didn't know how to do this. And I started looking at, how do you change the mindset of somebody who's antagonistic to change? Because, dude, some of the 2% ended up getting in fist fights with people back home because they were like, you've changed, you've sold out. And I was like, this is bananas. So it just brought me back around to where I started, which is actually filmmaking, which is what I leveraged in marketing to help grow Quest. And coming back to the sense, if I could change their self-narrative, if I could change their value system and their beliefs with stories by hitting them on an emotional level, and it's my first passion, my first skill set anyway, could I really do something? And so when I left Quest, I think my last day was a Monday or a Tuesday, and the very next day we started Impact Theory. So it wasn't like I exited and wanted to take time off. Like, I understand meaning and purpose are the primary drivers in anybody's life. No matter how much money you have, meaning and purpose will be the thing that wake you up. And so we started it the next day with the goal of building the next Disney, meaning literal film and TV storytelling, so that we could change over generations sort of what the cultural subconscious celebrates. And if we could get people to celebrate a growth mindset, working hard, being tenacious, personal responsibility, things that have become sort of passe, which I am utterly shocked by, then we could have real impact. And so that's why it's called Impact Theory, because it is quite literally my theory on how to impact people at scale. All of the, self-improvement talk in the world is useless if you don't learn to become self-aware. Now, here's the great news. This is a process. Now, there are certainly some people that take to it a little bit more easily, and maybe you really struggle with self-awareness, but I'm going to walk you quickly through the process of how to gain some more self-awareness. So it goes like this. In your body, there's this thing called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the biggest nerve in your body. The vagus nerve runs all over, everywhere, touches every system, goes into your gut, down your limbs, everything. Now, most people think of the body as the brain telling your body what to do. And then a little bit of information from the body. If you hurt yourself or whatever, you're going to get a pain signal or a pleasure signal. But for the most part, it's a top-down system. Read Lisa Feldman Barrett's book, How Emotions Are Made. That book flips all of this on its head. And what it explains is that it's basically an extrapolation of the fact that the vagus nerve, 80% of the data that it sends is from the body to the brain, only 20% from the brain to the body. Think about that. And that emotions start in the body. So a big part of self-awareness is getting in your body, feeling your body, figuring out how an emotion manifests itself. Do you start to get flush? Do you feel jittery? Are you anxious? Are you angry? Beginning to identify the sensations in your body, because the way emotions are made, you get a feeling in your body. Your body then maps that feeling on to what was happening the last time that you felt that. Oh, the last time you felt like that, you were angry. The last time you felt like that, you were scared. The last time you felt like that, you were in love, whatever. And your body tries to map, or your brain tries to map that body sensation onto a familiar state. And then once it goes, yeah, I know that this is fear, boom, all the responses that come with fear, and you go. And so one of the ways that people talk about anxiety, at a physiological level, anxiety looks very similar to excitement. And so one of the loops that a cognitive behavioral therapist, for instance, would tell you to do is to go, oh, I know this feeling. This is excitement. Not, oh, I know this feeling, I'm super anxious. oh, I know this feeling, this is excitement. And you constantly work to reframe that feeling as excitement. Now, the super weird thing is it works. Your brain actually believes what you tell it. So your brain is quite literally coming up with a backwards compatible story to try to make sense of the feeling, but it also allows you to put a conscious reinterpretation on top of that feeling. So now you're able to go, oh, this isn't anxiety. This is excitement. I feel that what's coming is going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And that's why my heart is beating faster. That's why my breath is getting more shallow, because I'm super excited to go do this thing. Now, when you first start doing it, of course, it sounds like BS and you're calling yourself out on it. But if you repeat it and you go through that process enough, it really does begin to come true. The next part of the equation is just getting really good at identifying the signal that your body's sending you. So instead of mapping it to sort of, 4 or 5 really basic primary emotions, fear, excitement, joy, sadness, whatever, like those really sort of primary colors of emotion, we get into a layer deeper and we start beginning to identify, oh, I get this is, I'm feeling flustered. Why am I feeling flustered? Oh, they're saying that I'm short and I'm insecure about my height. So, oh man, this isn't me that I dislike them. This is that they're tapping into my insecurity. The biggest argument my wife and I ever got into was over a cup of tea. Over a cup of tea. We got into this huge screaming match. It almost ended our vacation, what little vacation we had at that time. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. Like, we are legitimately yelling at each other. We are about to turn the car around on the freeway and go home and not go to our vacation over a cup of tea. And so finally, we just said, all right, hold on. What are we really fighting about? And that was the beginning of realizing my body sends me a signal. It's making me agitated. I blanket interpret this as, oh, I'm angry. Why am I angry? Oh, because they wasted time having this cup of tea. When in reality, it was this way deeper thing about respect. And I felt like she wasn't understanding how important it was to me to have taken time off to go on this vacation, to spend money. We were so poor, to spend money on a hotel. So I wanted to be there the second they would let us into that room to feel like I was getting the most out of my money. And for her, she's like, oh my God, I'm finally heard and understood that we're going on vacation. He's giving me some of his time. And so I'm going to start my day out with a cup of tea and just bask in, going slow and not, being hard charging for a minute. But we weren't understanding each other. And so we had this huge blow up over the tea. So beginning to identify in real time, my body's telling me something. I don't want to shove it into this primary basket of emotion. I want to figure out what's really going on. That some egregious percentage of the time, it's somebody's triggered an insecurity about something. You're not feeling respected. You're not feeling loved. You're not feeling smart. They make you feel dumb, make you feel poor, whatever you have your insecurities around. And when you can actually talk about those insecurities, now things begin to unlock. But it begins with that process of, I feel something in my body. What is it? Put a name to it, make it as nuanced as possible, and then articulate it out loud. When you start doing that enough, all of a sudden you're able to get to that very quickly, and that will change the game. How do you deal with people that show irritation when you speak, but don't address what their problem is? I love this one. Okay, so here's what I do. I call that shit out in real time. Now, I don't call it out like, yo, what are you doing? I call it out like, hey, let me know if I'm misreading, but you really seem frustrated. It is so scandalous. Nobody ever does that. Nobody ever acknowledges the elephant in the room. People feel like they can say something however they want to say it, and you're only going to be able to comment on the actual words that they say, which is bullshit. That's some weird convention that just isn't true. And if you take the time to say, hey, totally, I could be misreading this, but you seem frustrated. No, I'm not frustrated at all. You're coming across aggressive. And if you can help me understand why, because if there's something that I'm doing or saying that's upsetting you, I want to understand it. And if you're saying that not as a gotcha, but really actually trying to understand it, like you're trying to disarm the situation, you are more than prepared to point those two thumbs at you. You're more than prepared for you to actually have done something that you didn't see that might have upset that person, they might really have a legitimate grief. And if you come at it from that standpoint and you're not trying to trick them, trap them, you're just actually trying to understand that desire to understand. And when they realize there's nowhere to hide because you're going to point out the way that something is being delivered. And by the way, I will throw people a lifeline. So when I say, hey, I'm really just trying to understand, you seem upset, frustrated, agitated, help me see, because if I did something, I would want to address that. And then if they keep demonstrating that they're angry, but keep saying that they're not, then I would just say, help me understand the level of aggression that's coming across now. Do you think I'm just misinterpreting it? Whatever. And so then we go down that path. Now, in a fantasy land, there's somebody nearby that you can actually pull in. And so at Impact Theory, we always tell people, don't go have one of these arguments alone. Grab another peer, or in the case of a company, somebody that you report to essentially moderate the discussion. So you could say, hey, if you think I'm misinterpreting the signal and that there is no frustration or agitation here, I'm perfectly willing to be told that I'm just misreading the situation. And so then if it's like they're having a hard time recognizing that they're being frustrated, if we were alone and there's nobody there to moderate, then I might say something by way of a lifeline like, is it possible that when I said this, that hit you the wrong way? And so you sort of pre-masticate the idea for them. Maybe you have an insight that they're unable to have, and recognizing that a lot of times people are angry, but they don't have the self-awareness to understand what's happening. So they're getting frustrated, they're angry about something, but they're not even sure why or what they're angry with. Now, as somebody who's had that happen to me, where I'm like, why the hell am I getting sharp all of a sudden? I have nothing but empathy and compassion for whoever's going through that. So again, I'm not trying to trap them. I don't want them to look bad. I'm going to help them navigate their way out of this. And I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to understand. And if you go into it trying to understand, now the other person feels that. You can hand that olive branch, or you can say, hey, why don't we take a minute, go our separate ways, let's come back, rediscuss this, and I'll try to see if I can understand what I might have said that upset you, or to understand why I'm misreading you, or whatever. And if that's sincere and you're not just trying to trick them, then I think you will be shocked at how far that goes.
Ray Dalio has a principle called believability. Everybody needs a believability score. Now, this guy takes it to the extreme. And by the way, I just took a note for us to really implement this stuff here. We're going to have to figure out how everyone needs an actual numerical value that each of us can look at and say, this is Chase's believability score. This is Tom's believability score. So you really do have to make it quantifiable. So if somebody's giving you advice about something that they have not done in their own life, then they have basically a 0 believability score. And somebody who has a 0 believability score shouldn't be pushing their idea like they know something. They should be asking a lot of questions. Now, when you're talking to somebody that's done it, Ray Dalio's saying is 3 times or more. If they've successfully done something 3 times or more, then they have believability in that area. So you want to find people that have believability, that really know what they're talking about, and then you should listen. You should ask a lot of questions. You should really come to understand it. If they haven't done that, they may still have amazing ideas, but what you need, because sometimes a novice has really fresh insights because they're just not stuck in the dogmatic ways of thinking that experts usually get into, but you need to be thinking about it differently. So rather than listening to their conclusions, you should be trying to understand their methodology. How did they get there? What is their process, their reasoning for making the statement that they're making? Now, if their reasoning is sound, then their conclusion may very well be worthwhile, but you have to understand their reasoning. So one of those two things. So either they are an expert in that area and thusly you should listen, or they are not, and you should only be thinking about what their process was to get to that conclusion. And then you have to be able to derive your own assessment as to whether or not you should listen to them. There's not going to be anything more empirical than that.
When you find even something like a conversation, you find that your mind is wandering, some of this is just training yourself to focus. So we live in this eternally distracted society where we're constantly seeking those dopamine rewards that you get from checking your phone or whatever. Now, you didn't list that as one of the things that is your problem, but meditation is the answer, sort of regardless of what the impetus is, regardless of what it is that you find yourself being pulled towards, whether it's the squirrel, as you say, or something else. Training yourself to be able to extend the period of time where you're focusing on one thing is going to be extraordinarily helpful. And it can be as simple as just coming back to the breath. This does not need to be a grand spiritual thing that you do, though I think that there are huge benefits to meditation on that side, but just training your attention, learning to apply your attention to the thing that you want to focus on is a skill. All of this stuff is a process. And once you understand that it is a process, then it becomes something that you can train. And so sitting in a noisy room, it doesn't even need to be a quiet room. In fact, it might be better practice, certainly as you get more advanced, to do it in a noisy room so that you learn when something pulls your attention that you have control of bringing it back. And in a meditative practice that's focused around the breath, you would just come back to the breath. In a more mindfulness approach, you would use any sensation that you can to come back to this present moment. It could be the noise that you heard of reminding you that you're there in that room. It could be if your feet are starting to tingle because of the way that you're sitting. It's, feeling your back against the couch, whatever. Using something that is in that moment to remind yourself to be present, to be there, not to let your thoughts drift. And you'll find that in the beginning, every 3 seconds, my mind is wandering. I'm going to something else. And it may even take you minutes before you even realize that your attention has wandered. And in that moment, you bring yourself back to the breath. You give yourself some grace. You don't panic that you have let your mind wander, and you just keep doing that. And day after day, you will find in the beginning, it's every 3 seconds, and then it's every 10 seconds. And then you might be able to stay focused on your breath for 30 seconds. And one thing that I did a lot in the beginning is I would just count my breaths. And I would find in the beginning, I couldn't complete a single breath cycle and stay focused on my breath for the 4 parts of a breath cycle, right? The inhale, hold. The exhale, hold. Those 4 parts. That's my meditation practice. Very simple, 4-part, what they call box breathing. And it's just box breathing. Those 4 parts make up the 4 sides of the box. And I couldn't make it through a single breath without my mind wandering. And then I would get to the point where I could do 10 breaths. And then now I'd say my record is probably somewhere around 16 or 17 breaths. I don't think I've ever made it to 20. But that's a pretty long time when you're breathing slowly. I would say it's maybe 2 minutes, something like that. It's a long time, at least for me, to be able to keep my attention totally uninterrupted on one thing. A lot of people struggle with their family. Now, here is the hard reality to be faced. For a lot of toxic people, the right answer is to just distance yourself, to not be around them, to close that door, create the boundaries, and make sure that you don't have to deal with them. And the reality is that option is on the table even for family. But if you guys are anything like me, the idea of cutting them out of your life, even if they're difficult, I'm grateful that I don't have toxic people in my immediate family, that is for sure. But nonetheless, there are certain people that I wouldn't cut out of my life no matter what their mindset is. And so because that's the harder group to deal with, I want to address that first. So let's say that there's somebody in your life. It could be your parents, could be a sibling, could be a loved one. And for whatever reason, you're unwilling to carve out that boundary and just say, I'm not going to have them in my life. Then it becomes part of the toxicity is that you're taking on what they're saying. And this is where I want you guys to understand. You don't even have to make a big scene about it. When people try to put something on me, tell me that I can't be something, I can't do something, the way that I live my life is a mistake and I'm hurting myself and I'm hurting other people, I don't have to take that on just because they believe it. And then more importantly, I don't have to convince them otherwise. So it is okay for people to have a negative opinion about you. And one thing that I want you guys to understand is when somebody is coming at something with that kind of negativity, when where they live is a negative place, when their worldview is this dark and gloomy place such that they feel the need to moralize to other people, to tell them what they're doing is wrong, that is such a gnarly place to live. It is a corrosive mentality. And so people that imbue that, not only do you not need to take it on, not only do you not need to convince them, but the thing that's probably going to serve you the best in that moment is compassion, to understand that living in that mentality of self-righteousness, of seeing the faults in other people without having the self-awareness to see your own mistakes, your own foibles, the problems with your own mentality, to be so outwardly focused that you feel that you need to go around telling other people how to live or to judge them. That is a punishment unto itself. And part of the reason that it's a punishment unto itself is anytime that you are looking to the outside world for the problems, you fail to recognize in yourself your own deficiencies, which stop you from progressing. Now, if I'm right, that progress is a foundational pillar to human happiness, which everything I know about life and humans reinforces that that is a true statement, then anything that stops you from seeing yourself clearly is something that holds you back. It stops you from having that progress. It stops you from building a life of joy. And at the end of the day, living a joyful life is really the sum total of this. So when people are coming after you like that, and they're not coming to you from a place of compassion or empathy, that darkness, that bitterness, that anger, that vitriol is its own punishment. It is corrosive. It does hold people back. It will stop them from ever having the joyful life that they want. The most joyful people in the world, the only fingers they ever point are thumbs, and they point them back at themselves. And when you look for what you can control, when you look for the things that you can do differently in your life to get a different result, now all of a sudden you realize that you're not out of control. You're not powerless. There's no reason to feel hopeless because you can get better. You can improve. You can recognize where you are deficient. You can recognize what your goals demand of you, and then you can just go about building that skill set, improving yourself, and getting the outcomes that you want in life. And that progress in and of itself is the reward. It is the thing that leads to joy. One of the goals of my life is to get to the point where in 30 seconds or less, I can change the course of somebody's life through magic words, for lack of a better way to think of it. And I'm really trying. And I won't give up. But as of right now, the only solution that I have when you love somebody that is stuck in negativity is what I call just sit. If I know I'm going to spend time with them and I can't break them out of their negative ways, then I'm just going to sit and be with them, and I'm going to love them, and I'm going to make sure that they know that I love them. And I'll live my life without judgment, without needing them to change, without trying to preach to them. I'm just going to be with them and find things that we can talk about that's fun. There's almost always something that even the most negative person loves. And if you can find that thing, fishing, card collecting, Hawaii, whatever somebody's thing is, whatever it is that they like to talk about, and you get them onto that subject, you'll actually have fun. It's really surprising. My dad's wife is way into quilting. Now, I can't tell you how not into quilting I am, but she's really passionate about it. And having a conversation with her about quilting is so interesting because she's so passionate. And whenever you can get somebody on to something that they're passionate about, whether they're a positive person or a negative person, it gets to be a pretty fun place. So I just sit, I try to find things that they're going to be excited to talk about. And my whole goal is to make them feel loved where they're at. Now, I live my life the way I'm going to live it. I don't join them in negativity. I don't, go in on those conversations, but I don't want them to feel judged. I don't want to put distance between us. There's nothing worse than making somebody that you love and care about feel judged, which of course I was even though I was just trying to help. I didn't want to see them suffer anymore. In constantly saying, hey, you're doing this wrong. Like there's a better way. You'll be happier. it just made them feel judged. And it was putting tremendous distance between me and somebody that I cared about. So it works. It will work every time. But you have to let go and know that they're going to suffer until they're ready to change.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Gary Vee, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
The quicker you get comfortable with losing, the quicker you're going to have a happy life. You don't want to lose. It's not necessarily what you're trying to do, but not all losses are really losses. They're just step backs, and they're always an opportunity to learn